All right, thanks, Frey, for joining me for this little interview. Yeah, I know you're currently at home in Italy. I'm here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's tomorrow for you and still today for me with the time zone difference. But I thought it'd be good to just chat a little bit about the Axis Syllabus and Nomadic College. Just let people know if they're interested in signing up and registering for the Nomadic College in October here at Earthdance.
Yes, and I wanted to thank you, Christos, for reaching out to us to bring us back there to Earthdance. We were holding it there for a series of years, I think maybe 6 years in a row, and it was very successful. A lot of people came from Canada, New York, even California. So it became a pivotal point for the introduction of the Axis Syllabus to people who were non-initiates, and also a gathering place for those who were. So I hope that maybe this can start a new tradition, and that the Nomadic College can flourish there again.
When I think was it 2017 the last time you guys?
2017 or 16, yeah, I think.
Yeah, and I know the last year's kind of travel slowed down a lot with the pandemic. I know you guys have been doing them still in Europe, I believe.
We are now opening a new concept for the Nomadic College, which is shorter sessions, but more of them. So, for example, we're starting the first of 3 chapters of the Nomadic College here on our land, as you see, where we're living on a farm, and there's lots of fruit trees, and we're also starting to grow food. But I built an outdoor dance floor that can accommodate 30 people. And we're partnering up with a local association that has places for people to stay in, and a professional kitchen, which is not a 4-minute drive from here and 20-minute walk. And and then the next chapter will be in France in August, and then the third one will be at Earthdance in the United States. So we're planning to do 3 a year.
Awesome. And
as opposed to one big one.
Okay. And just people can know you're on the east coast of Italy, kind of straight shot east from Naples. Would you describe it as?
Yeah, northeast, around Brindisi, not far from Brindisi. The little town of Ostuni is 7-minute drive from here.
Cool. And I've been there, and it's a beautiful place. So yeah, if people are interested, or if they're Europe or connecting in Italy and France earlier, or in the States at Earthdance.
Yes, you can go to the website, nomadicollege.org.
I'll definitely put that in the link.
The links.
But for people that are not familiar with either Axis Syllabus or Nomadic College, do you want to just share a little bit about your development of the Axis Syllabus and why you developed it first?
Sure. Fundamentally, it began as a collection of useful notes on documenting my own injuries and what counsel I got, and testing, and the results of the tests that I made, and then consulting the relevant sciences, physics and anatomy, and ferreting out discrepancies, and then documenting the trials, looking at the scientific studies, and then listening to anecdotal stories and compiling all of those notes. And then that became a reference for when I was teaching. And as it developed into a more organized archive, the people around me who were studying with me began to ask if they could teach what I was teaching. And that provoked a more dedicated formalization of the list. And the Axis Syllabus is basically the list. It's a list of references for potential structural limitations and the forces that the body has to deal with as it's moving. And it's a kind of Well, it's an incitement to an ethical handling of the body, because the indications are that if we do certain things in certain ways, that we raise the likelihood of injury. And so there's also the fact that each person's body is a slightly different variation of, or a slightly different expression of these principles. So that means that the teacher needs to ask more questions than instruct, because each person's body needs to be understood, and the response to suggestions noted, and then responded to. So the Axis Syllabus is not a practice, not a particular practice, but it does imply a certain approach. It implies a questioning approach rather than a domineering one.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't limit the vocabulary that the teacher is going to use, or the style of teaching that they choose, or the order of events in a class. So that's where people, I think, are a little confused. What I think is important is that these principles can manifest in different ways, and that's why I've resisted the attempt to make an equation of the Axis Syllabus with what people do with it, because the clarification or the distinction between principle and practice allows for innovation, and it allows for the variations in approach and method that are necessary, actually, when we're going to adapt and then adopt the different strategies that are appropriate for the circumstances, but also for the people that we're working with.
Okay.
So the Axis Syllabus doesn't exclude any of the existing dance styles or fitness training ideas or performance notions, but it does give a kind of lens through which to evaluate the practices in general, but also for the individual body, in an attempt to try to understand the outcomes, either positive or negative. And that's well, hopefully the idea is to give over that information to the individual, so that they can make the decision for themselves what they'd like to do,
Mm-hmm.
or evaluate what they'd like to do with an understanding of the consequences.
Yeah.
So it's not about policing movement
Mm-hmm.
from our side, not from the teacher's side. It's more about informing people so that they can make informed decisions about what they consent to, because I think that consent is the only kind of informed consent is the only legitimate kind of agreement.
Okay. I think I come across you guys in 2013 at Earthdance. It's been 10 years now. I think one thing that, I mean, I fell in love with it, and been to several nomadic colleges now, but one thing I appreciated was that it's not based on any kind of aesthetic ideal. And that way I understood it as like an applied movement theory, which can be applied to contact dance, to capoeira, to contra dancing, to exercise. And so it's more like principles of movement, of efficient and safe movement, as opposed to looking a certain way, or like being an Axis Syllabus dancer, as opposed to just applying it to any dance or movement that one wants to.
I would say healthy movement rather than safe. Safety is not necessarily healthy,
right?
We can limit ourselves in the name of safety to the point where we're not where we get weak and vulnerable, and more vulnerable to injury. And health is anti-fragile, right? We're looking to strengthen, to expand, to increase the amount of risk that we can manage. So risk friendly rather than averse.
So more like resilience.
Yes, I think that you're right. That your perception, confirms what I would like the Axis Syllabus to be remembered as, which is a listed principle rather than a method, rather than a particular method.
Right.
People argue with me and they say, no, this it is it's a vocabulary, it's an approach. I think all those things are just tribal, right? There's a tendency to want to formalize things and to say, this is the Axis Syllabus walk, this is the Axis Syllabus dance, and so on, because people generally tend to want to look to form. But that's if we're struggling to stay beyond or ahead of tendencies to create an aesthetic, then we want to watch out for formalism.
And that, I mean, dance is very strong in that tradition of like Graham method or Cunningham method of like really these kinds of schools of movement based on particular aesthetic principles. So I think, I mean, you're very much going against the current of what dance training might look like.
Yeah, and I'm not averse to aesthetics. I think that that in a professional dance world, discussion of aesthetics is appropriate. And that's era. There's specific eras in which this or that aesthetic is meaningful. And the word aesthetics, I think, aesthetic has been distorted. Aesthetic as opposed to anesthetic. So aesthetic is a celebration of sensation, as opposed to anesthetic, which is when you're numb. So the whole idea of an aesthetic is to engage and to feel more. But formalism, I think, could be considered, let's say, an opposition to that, because I think formalism becomes an object in and of itself, and people are focused on, how things should or shouldn't be, and this becomes it's a very dogmatic approach to, or conceptualized approach to moving rather than sensed. So the Axis Syllabus is also, I think, was very much influenced by contact improvisation's training basis, which is to move from sensation, which means that whatever let's say the style or modality of movement, it's more of a happenstance, it's more of an emanation rather than a target.
And what I imagine, and I know we've talked about this before, and what happens to dancers' bodies as they get older is you have a particular form, and then with all these diverse bodies and shapes, you try to compel and form people's bodies to conform to that particular form and aesthetic. And that's where obviously a lot of injuries can happen. And
yes, because the forms are oversimplified. What we can imagine or what we can project is missing the density of reality. These layers of intermeshed fatty tissues and various fluids that are pumping and moving around, and it's very complex in there. So when you conceptualize something, all that is cleaned away. But if you adhere to your concept, then you leave out the body's own reality. You're constrained to. But I don't think that that's necessarily wrong. But what I do think is unfortunate is when people are so dogmatic about their adherence to form that they won't listen to their body. So I was having an argument with a ballet teacher about the inherent limitation of bringing the leg back behind us, or extension, and that the ligaments in the hip are naturally resistant because the hip joint is very shallow in the front. So bringing the leg back creates leverage on the femoral head towards the front. And she was insisting, no, we have to liberate the leg to go backwards. So there's this notion of struggling against the body's limitations in order to approximate a conceptual idea that I think is at some point, like at some on the extreme edges, it starts to be perverse, destructive, deliberately destructive.
I mean, not to get too much into the weeds, but from what I understand, ballet was like a material expression of French Enlightenment. So very much this idea of like transcending the material, right? And humans kind of overcoming. I don't know.
Well, ballet just means dance, and it started as a popular movement, and it was done in the round, and it was done without mirrors, and it was done to rhythm, and there wasn't a particular vocabulary. That was, before Louis XIV hired the most popular dancers and founded his company, and he sort of privatized the whole thing. And then he put it on a proscenium stage, and from there on, it became more and more stylized.
Mm-hmm.
So, but before it was just spontaneous, people getting together, playing music, and moving and watching each other move.
Mm. Maybe that's a segue to that.
Like any other dance tradition. So.